Please, listen. I didn't do it. No, please, I beg you.
Today we make an example. Pour the fuel.
Please, I have a mother. She is sick. I only took bread. 1 loaf of bread, please.
Every thief has a story. Pour it. No escape for you.
Nobody touches him.
Lady, walk away. This is not your business.
What did he take? He snatched bread from my stand and ran in front of everybody. How much? That's not the point. How much? 200 naira. But the disrespect alone. Here is 10,000. For the bread and for your trouble. We're done here.
Take the tire off him.
Can you walk?
Why are you helping me?
Get in the car first.
It's you.
I know. You want to know why he recognized me? Keep watching. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from?
Another Monday. Lord, just let it be a quiet one. Kola, relax. You dey check this floor like you own the place. Somebody has to. Put your phone away, Dio. Mr. Fashola does a walkthrough at 10. Fashola only cares about the VIP section. Me, I'm not stressing for a job that doesn't pay overtime. Then why are you here? Because rent is higher. Check the east aisle for me. I'll cover the floor. Yes, sir. General Kola, sir.
Do you carry La Mer or just the knockoffs? Yes, ma'am. We carry the full La Mer line. Just restocked this morning. Can I help you find? I'll find it myself.
No. Did she just... Okay, do your job, Kola. Do your job. Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
I'm going to need a moment of your time.
Excuse me?
There's an item in your bag that wasn't included in your transaction.
I'm sorry. Are you accusing me of something?
I'm not accusing you of anything, ma'am. I'm asking you to let me verify your bag against your receipt. It's standard procedure.
Standard procedure. Do you know who I am?
With respect, that's not relevant right now.
Young man, I have been shopping in stores like this since before you had a uniform to wear. I suggest you step aside.
Ma'am, I saw what happened in aisle 7. I need you to open your bag.
You are making a very serious mistake right now.
Ma'am, the bag, please.
I will have your job for this.
Then I'll lose it doing the right thing. The bag, ma'am. What is going on here? What is the problem?
Your staff has just publicly humiliated me in front of everyone.
Ma'am, I am so sorry. Kola, what did you do?
Sir, I observed this customer place an item from aisle 7 into her bag without paying for it. I asked to verify it. Kola, do you know who this woman is? Sir, that is now. This is Chief Raymond's daughter. Chief Raymond Ademi, who owns the building this store sits in. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Sir, With respect, I know what I saw. Apologize! I can't apologize for doing my job, sir.
Kola,
Sir, if I let this go, what is the point of me standing here? What am I protecting? The policy says, the policy! You are quoting policy to me right now? Yes, sir, because that's what I was hired to uphold. Ma'am, I want to personally apologize on behalf of Grandmat. This will not happen again. Please, can I offer you a compliment?
I don't want complimentary anything. I want that handled. Today.
Do you have any idea what you just cost this store? Sir, the item she took was a 47,000 naira face serum.
47,000! Her father spends 47 million in deals connected to Kane every year, Kola. 40 million!
That doesn't make theft legal, sir. No, but it makes it irrelevant. That's how the world works. You think justice is some kind of shield? You think being right protects you? I think doing the right thing matters, even when it's inconvenient. You're a good man, Kola. You really are. But good men who don't know their place, they don't last. My place is to protect this store. Your place is to protect the relationships that keep this store alive. I'm letting you go. You're firing me. I'm terminating your contract, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your final pay will be processed. I've worked here for 3 years.
I know.
3 years. Perfect record, not one complaint. Kola, my mother is sick, sir. I need this job. I'm not asking you to agree with what I did. Don't do this. I'm sorry, Kola. Pack your things.
It's true? They're really?
Yeah.
Kola, man, I'm sorry.
Don't be. I'll do it again. That's the problem. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do. For what it's worth, you were right. Everyone on the floor knew it. Being right doesn't pay my mother's hospital bills.
Hey,
What do you want?
I heard what happened.
Then you got what you wanted.
I didn't ask him to fire you.
You didn't stop him either.
I can talk to my father. He can.
Please don't. I don't want anything from you. Not your father's connections. Not your guilt. Nothing.
You're seriously going to walk away with nothing?
I still have my conscience. That's not nothing.
You really would have lost everything just to be right. Kola, you're home early.
Slow day, Mama. How are you feeling?
Come here. Let me look at you. You said slow day.
Yes, Ma.
Then why do your eyes look like you've been carrying something heavy since morning?
I'm fine, Mama.
Kola.
I'm fine.
There's rice on the stove. I asked Mrs. Abara next door to help me put it on before noon. Eat something.
Did you eat?
A little.
Mama,
I said a little, not nothing.
don't fuss.
Go and eat.
The cough is worse today.
It's the same.
It's not the same. It sounds deeper.
I've had this cough longer than you've had that uniform. Go and eat your food and stop diagnosing me.
Mama, did you take your medication this morning?
The evening ones are the important ones.
Mama, where are the morning tablets?
Kola.
Where are they?
There are only 3 tablets left. These were supposed to last until Friday.
I've been splitting them half in the morning, half at night to make them stretch.
Why didn't you tell me?
Because you worry enough for 10 people. You were going to work and I didn't want to trouble you.
Mama, you cannot split those tablets. The doctor was...
The doctor was specific about a lot of things that cost money we don't have, my son.
$11,400. God, just help me, please. Dayo, hey, are you at home? Yeah, what's up? I need to ask you something and I need you to be true with me. Can you lend me 7,000? Just until the end of the month? No, I understand. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Uncle Festus, good evening, sir. Yes, sir, I know it's been a while. Sir, I'm calling because Mama is not well. And I need help with her medication. Yes, sir. I see. No, I understand. Thank you, sir. Tunde, it's Kola. I know I owe you from last time, but this is for my mother. Yeah. Okay.
You're sitting there staring at me like I'm about to disappear.
I'm just keeping you company.
Kola, what happened today?
I lost my job.
Tell me.
A woman stole from the store. Expensive item. I stopped her. Turns out she's the daughter of someone important. Fashola fired me for embarrassing her.
And did you know who she was when you stopped her?
No.
And if you had known,
I like to think I still would have done the same thing.
then you did the right thing.
Mama, the right thing left us without income.
The wrong thing would have left you without yourself. I raised you to be a man who stands.
Kola, even when standing costs something. You hear me?
But what about your medication? What about...
God has never let us go without. Not once, not in 64 years.
Mama!
You'll find a way. You always find a way. That's who you are.
Get some rest. I'll sort out the medication tomorrow morning.
Don't do anything foolish for my sake.
When have I ever done anything foolish?
Every day of your life, my stubborn son.
Good morning. How can I help you? Good morning. I need to refill this prescription, please. The full cost will be 18,500 naira. Okay. I have 11,400. I can pay the balance by the end of the week. I just need the medication today. My mother's condition is... Sir, I'm sorry. We don't offer credit.
He had heard those words before, in a different office, from a different man. I'm sorry, but sorry never filled a prescription. Sorry never brought a fever down. Sorry never sat beside a sick woman at midnight and made her breathe easier. Sorry was the cheapest thing in the world, and it was the only thing anyone kept offering him. Kola didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam his hands on the counter. He didn't demand to speak to a manager or threaten consequences he didn't have the power to deliver. He did something far more difficult than any of that. He told the truth, quietly, completely, the way only desperate people can. He told the pharmacist about his mother, about the small apartment on Adisa Street, where she had lived for 30 years and raised him alone, and never once complained about the size of it, about the couch that had become her bed, because the walk to the bedroom had grown too long, about the Ankara blanket she kept pulled up to her chin, even in the afternoon heat, because her body had forgotten how to stay warm. He told him about the tablets, about the way she had been splitting them in half, every single morning, every single night, because she knew the money wasn't there, and she didn't want him to worry. And she thought she was helping. She thought she was buying him time. She didn't know that having the dosage wasn't stretching the medication. It was weakening it. It was giving the infection room to breathe. It was slowly, gently, without anyone meaning for it to happen, making her worse. He told him all of it, standing at that counter, with 11,400 naira in a biscuit tin, and a prescription that wanted 18,000, and a gap between those two numbers that felt like the edge of something very final. The pharmacist listened, and to his credit, he was not a cruel man. You could see that. You could see it in the way he looked down at the counter, instead of at Kola's face, in the way he set the prescription down carefully, instead of sliding it back immediately, in the way his jaw tightened, the way jaws do, when a person is fighting between what they feel and what they are allowed to do. He was a man caught between a policy and a person. And the policy was written by people who had never stood on Kola's side of the counter. But feeling something and doing something about it are two entirely different things. One costs nothing. The other costs everything. And most people, when forced to choose, protect what they cannot afford to lose. I am sorry, sir. It is our store policy. We cannot release medication without full payment. I wish I could help you. I genuinely do. But my hands are tied. Policy. That word had followed Kola like a shadow, ever since the day he lost his job. At Grand Mart, it was policy that demanded he stop at ease. It was policy that Fashola then ignored, the moment it became inconvenient. And now here was policy again. showing up in a white coat this time, still just as immovable, still just as indifferent to the human being standing in front of it. He asked about government health centers. The pharmacist mentioned one nearby. 3 weeks waiting list. Kola did the math in his head, the same way he had been doing math all week. 3 weeks against half tablets, and a fever that was already winning. The numbers didn't work. The numbers never worked. He picked up the prescription from the counter. He folded it the way his mother folded things. Slowly, carefully, like it was something worth preserving, like there was still a plan attached to it, even when he couldn't see what the plan was. He put it back in his pocket. He looked the pharmacist in the eye. He said, "Thank you." And he meant it, because that is who Kola was. Even then, even there, he said thank you to the man who had just turned him away, because manners were one of the last things the world hadn't taken from him yet. He walked out into the morning, stood on the pavement outside the pharmacy, with his back against the wall, and his eyes closed, and the sun coming down on his face, like it had no idea what was happening. The city moved around him, motorcycles and minibuses, a woman selling ground nuts from a basin on her head, 2 men arguing loudly about football outside a shop, children in school uniforms cutting through the crowd, everyone going somewhere, everyone with somewhere to be, and Kola standing completely still, in the middle of all of it, like a man trying to remember what direction was forward. He took out his phone, stared at the screen. No missed calls, no messages. The same silence that had greeted him every time he had reached out that week, and found that the people he thought were in his corner had quietly moved to a safer distance. He thought about the calls he had made the night before. Uncle Festus first. A man who had eaten at their table more times than he could count. A man his mother had cooked for, prayed for, shown up for. Uncle Festus, who had listened to everything Kola said, and then told him he was going through his own difficulties, and maybe try again at the end of the month. Then Tunda, old colleague, good man on ordinary days. Tunde, who still owed Kola money from 2 years back, and had laughed about it so many times it had become a joke between them. Tunde, who said he would call back. Tunde, who did not call back. Then Dayo, young, underpaid, living 4 people to a single-room Dayo, who had said, "I swear, Kola, I would if I had it." And Kola believed him. Because of all of them, Dayo was the only one whose excuse was actually true. He put the phone back in his pocket. He pushed off the wall. He started walking, because standing still was a luxury. He could not afford either. The days that followed were a particular kind of exhaustion, not the exhaustion of doing too much, the exhaustion of trying everything and getting nowhere, the exhaustion of a man running very hard on a road that keeps extending in front of him, no matter how far he goes. He went to a construction site 2 streets away. The foreman looked at his hands. "Soft hands," he said. "We need men who have worked with their hands. Come back when you have experience." He went to a printing shop on the main road. The owner pointed at a handwritten sign on the wall, "Not hiring." The sign looked like it had been there for years, like it was more decoration than information at this point. He delivered resumes to 3 different offices, dressed as well as he could manage. Shoes polished, collar straight. Resume printed at the business center down the road. For 200 naira, he could not really spare. At the first office, the receptionist took the resume and placed it on a pile that was all ready, 20 pages deep. At the second office, they said the position had just been filled. At the third office, they said, "Come back next week." He went back next week. They said, "Come back next week again." He understood then what next week meant. It meant no. It had always meant no. They just preferred the version of no that didn't require them to say it to his face. Each evening, he came home to his mother. Each evening, he made the face that said, "Everything is fine," the face that said, "I am handling it," the face that said, "Do not worry about me, because worrying about me will make you sicker, and I cannot afford for you to be sicker." He made that face so many times that week. It started to feel like his real one. And that scared him more than anything else. On the 5th night, she asked him to sit beside her. She held his hand the way she had held it, when he was small and afraid of thunderstorms. With both of hers, covering it completely, like her hands alone could protect him from whatever was coming. She told him that God had never let them go without. Not once. Not in 64 years. She told him to hold on. She told him not to let the weight of it bend him into someone else. She called him her stubborn son. She said it like it was the greatest compliment in the world, because to her it was. He sat beside her until she fell asleep. Then he went to the kitchen, opened the biscuit tin, counted the money one more time, as if counting it again would change the number. It didn't. It never did. 11,400 naira, against a world that wanted 18. He sat at the table in the dark for a long time that night, not sleeping, not crying, just sitting inside the problem, just being present with the fact that he had run out of honest options, and the morning was still coming, whether he was ready for it or not. The next day, he woke up early, made her tea. 6:30, exactly the way she liked it. Too much sugar. He stirred it and said nothing about the sugar, because some arguments are not worth having, and some mornings need to be gentle. She drank it slowly, thanked him, asked him if he had eaten. He said yes. He had not eaten. He kissed her forehead, told her he was going out to follow up on something. She told him not to do anything foolish. He promised he wouldn't. He walked out the door. He walked to the market that afternoon with 800 naira in his pocket. Not enough for the medication, not enough for a proper meal, just enough to feel like something rather than nothing. He moved through the stalls slowly, looking at prices, looking away from prices, doing the math that always came up short. He stopped at the bread stand. The loaves were fresh, still warm from the morning, wrapped neatly in cellophane, stacked in rows like they were waiting for him specifically. 1,200 naira each. The woman running the stand had turned to argue with another customer about change. Her back was to the bread. The market was loud. The crowd was thick. Nobody was looking in his direction. Kola stood completely still. He thought about what he had told his boss. Theft is theft. He thought about what he had told the crowd at Grand Mart. In his head, in his principles, in the way he had lived his entire life. A thing that belongs to someone else is not yours to take, no matter the reason, no matter the need, no matter how loud the hunger gets. He thought about his mother, her hands over his, her voice telling him not to become someone else, her smile at 6:30 in the morning over a cup of tea with too much sugar. He thought about all of it. He held all of it. He stood at the edge of who he was and looked across at who the world had pushed him to become. And then, for the first time in his life, Kola looked away from himself. His hand moved, one loaf, into his jacket. He turned. He walked. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Thief. The word hit the market like a stone hitting water, and everything that followed spread outward from it in fast, terrible rings. The market that had been so loud, so busy, so completely indifferent to his suffering all week, suddenly had all the time in the world to pay attention to him. And Kola ran, knowing already that some things, once done, cannot be undone. They caught him before he cleared the end of the street, not because Kola was slow, not because he didn't try, but because the market had eyes everywhere and legs that moved faster than one tired, hungry man who hadn't eaten properly in 7 days. The first hand that grabbed him caught his collar. The second caught his arm. By the time he stopped struggling, there were too many hands to count, and the bread, the one loaf of bread that had started all of this, fell out of his jacket and onto the ground, where it lay in the dust, still wrapped in its cellophane, still warm from the morning, like it had no idea what it had cost. Someone picked it up and held it over their head. Evidence. trophy, proof. The crowd that gathered around it grew the way crowds always grow around someone else's misfortune. Fast, certain of itself, and completely unbothered by the details. Kola stopped fighting, not because he had given up, but because he understood something in that moment that his body knew before his mind did. Fighting would make it worse. Stillness was the only thing he had left to offer. So he went still. He went down to his knees, and he breathed. The way his mother had taught him to breathe when things got bigger than he could manage. Slowly, from somewhere deep, like a man anchoring himself to the ground, so the storm can't take him. The crowd tightened around him, voices layering over each other, the way market voices do. Everyone talking, everyone certain, nobody listening. Thief, that word. Kola had used that word once. He had used it carefully, professionally, correctly. He had used it looking at Aiz in the eye, in a clean, air-conditioned store, with cameras on the ceiling and policy on his side. And it had cost him everything. Now the word was being used on him, loud and rough and without any of the care. He had given it, and it landed on him like something physical, like something with weight, like a stone that finds the exact place you are already bruised. He wanted to explain. He wanted to stand up and say, "Do you understand what this week has been? Do you understand what it costs a man like me to reach the place where stealing bread feels like the only door left open? Do you understand that 6 days ago, I was the one on the other side of this, that I lost everything for being the one who stood against this?" But he said none of it, because he knew what it would sound like. Every thief has a story. That is what they would say. And they would be right. And they would also be wrong. And in a crowd like this, the difference between right and wrong is much smaller than anyone wants to admit. Mama Chisom arrived. She came through the crowd the way a woman comes, when something that belongs to her has been taken, with purpose, with fury, with the particular energy of someone who has worked too hard and too long to absorb this kind of loss quietly. Her head wrap was slightly off from running. Her gold tooth caught the afternoon light. When she opened her mouth to speak, and when she spoke, the crowd listened, because this was her bread, her loss, her right. Everything else was just noise gathering around the real thing. She had woken at 4 that morning, the same 4 in the morning she woke up every day, when the city was still dark and the air was still cool, and most people were still in the middle of dreams she could not afford to have. She had mixed the dough herself, measured the flour with hands that knew the weight by feel, because she had done it so many times. The measuring cup was almost beside the point. She had paid for everything, every ingredient, every cost, with money she had earned and counted and stretched the way people stretch money, when there is never quite enough of it. And now a man had walked up to her stand, in the middle of her working day, and taken what she had made, like it belonged to him. Kola understood her, more than she knew, more than she would have believed. If someone had told her in that moment, because they were the same, two people who built their lives with their own hands, two people for whom nothing had ever been given, two people who trusted that the world would at least respect what they had earned. He was not her enemy, but he had acted like one. And in the economy of survival, intention means very little. What matters is what happened. And what happened was that her bread was gone. The mob leader stepped forward. He was the kind of man who became very important in the presence of an audience, the kind of man who used other people's anger as a stage for his own authority. He had a loud voice and a wider stance than necessary, and the absolute confidence of someone who has never had to question themselves, because everyone around them always agreed too quickly. He looked at Kola. The way you look at a problem you have already solved, the way you look at something you have decided does not deserve the full weight of your consideration. And then he said the words, Bring tire. 2 words. The simplest sentence in the world. Subject and object. No complication. No ambiguity. No room between them for a human being to exist. The crowd shifted. It reorganized itself around a purpose, the way crowds do when someone gives them direction. People who had been watching suddenly became participants. People who had just arrived and didn't know the full story heard those 2 words and decided that was enough information. Someone disappeared into the market, came back less than a minute later, and there it was. A rubber tire, old and heavy and darkened with age, and carrying the particular smell. That meant everyone in that crowd understood exactly what was coming. Kola watched it move through the crowd toward him. He did not look away. He had spent his whole life refusing to look away from difficult things. His mother had taught him that. She had said that looking away never makes a thing smaller. It only gives it more room to grow in the dark. So he watched it come. The tire that someone's hands had touched, that someone had decided was the appropriate response to a loaf of bread worth 1,200 naira. He watched it come, and he thought about the distance between what a thing costs and what it is made to pay for. The tire went over his head, settled around his shoulders, heavier than it looked. Everything in that moment was heavier than it looked. A man appeared on the edge of the crowd, holding a red jerry can. He held it the way people hold objects when they want everyone to understand that they are serious, with both hands, with a certain stillness. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence, everyone already understood. The market went quiet. That particular silence, the silence that comes just before something, that cannot be taken back, the silence that a crowd makes when it has collectively decided something and is waiting for the moment to confirm it. In that silence, Kola closed his eyes. He did not pray to be saved. He had stopped expecting the world to save him. Somewhere around the 4th day of closed doors and empty promises, he prayed for his mother. He prayed that Mrs. Sabara next door would hear the silence of the apartment and go to check, that someone would bring her water, that someone would sit with her, that she would not spend the evening by the door, waiting for a son who wasn't going to come back through it. That was the thing that undid him, not the tire, not the crowd, not the jerry can or the smell of fuel, already beginning to reach him. Hair, sitting by that door, believing the way she had always believed in him, completely and without condition, and with a certainty that he had never deserved, and had spent his whole life trying to be worthy of. The mob leader crouched down in front of him, got close enough that Kola could see the calculation in his eyes, the performance of giving a man one last chance, the theater of mercy that was never really mercy at all. He asked Kola if he had anything to say, and Kola, because he was Kola, because 30 years of being his mother's son had made him into someone who told the truth, even when the truth had no audience willing to receive it, opened his mouth and gave them everything. His name, Kola Emmanuel. His address, Adisa Street, Block C, Apartment 4. His mother's name, Grace. Her age, 64 years old. The fever, the medication, the tablets cut in half, the biscuit tin, the 11,400 naira. That was never going to be 18. He laid it all out on the ground in front of them. The way you lay out something precious that you are no longer able to carry, not to save himself, not as strategy or manipulation, but so that someone in that crowd might remember enough of what he had said to send someone to Adisa Street if the worst happened. He gave them his mother's address, like a man writing a letter he wasn't sure would ever be delivered. The mob leader stood up, looked at the crowd. The crowd looked back, and that small, fragile window that had opened between Kola's words and the world's conscience closed. Poor Am, the man with the jerry can, stepped forward. And then, light headlights cutting through the narrow market path, with the sudden, absolute authority of something that was not supposed to be there, and had come anyway. A black SUV moving too fast for a market road, stopping too hard for a road this narrow, scattering 3 stalls at the entrance, and sending a display of tomatoes, rolling across the ground in every direction. The hazard lights came on. Once, twice, 3 times. Nobody moved. The driver's door opened, and a daze stepped out. Now you have to understand something about this moment, because it would be easy to look at Arais and see only what she had: the car, the clothes, the money that came out of her purse, like it was the easiest thing in the world. It would be easy to reduce what she did in that market to wealth doing what wealth does: opening doors, solving problems, buying its way past consequence. But that is not what this was. Arais had spent 4 days sitting with what she had done, 4 days of following Kola's situation from a distance she was ashamed of, 4 days of knowing and not acting, because acting meant showing up, and showing up meant admitting that the thing she had done had a face, had a name, had a mother on a couch on Adisa Street who was getting worse every day. She could have sent money through someone else. She could have made a call from the air conditioning of her car. She could have handled this the way she had always handled difficult things, at a distance, through other people, without ever getting close enough to feel the actual temperature of it. She didn't. She had gone to his house that morning, sat with his mother for an hour, while she looked for him. Let Grace think she was a friend from work. Did not correct her. Listen to a woman she had never met talk about her son, with a pride so large it barely fit in that small apartment, and something in Arais that had been locked for a very long time had quietly, irreversibly opened. She walked into that crowd without hesitating. No bodyguard, no rehearsed speech, no safety net below her. Just a woman in the wrong shoes for this ground, moving toward the thing she had been moving away from for too many days already. Stop. Nobody touches him. The crowd laughed, the way crowds laugh at anything that interrupts their certainty. The mob leader asked who she was, what gave her the right, what she knew about market justice and bread thieves, and the way things worked on this street. She didn't answer any of it. She walked past all of it like it was furniture. And she went straight to Mama Chisom because she understood something. The crowd was loud, but Mama Chisom was the center of it. She was the one who had actually been wronged. She was the one whose loss was real. Everything else, every voice that was shouting, every fist that was raised, every person who had appointed themselves an agent of justice this afternoon was feeding off her anger, not their own. Arais went to the source. She asked if Mama Chisom was the owner. Mama Chisom lifted her chin and said yes. Arais said, "You will get justice." And then she opened her purse. She didn't flinch at the number. She didn't negotiate. She didn't make Mama Chisom feel small for being owed something. She asked about the bread. She asked about the trouble, the time lost, the embarrassment of having it happen in front of a full market. She gave a number that said, "I am not paying you off. I am paying you what this actually cost. 10,000 naira. Mama Chisom counted it, the way working hands count money, slowly, deliberately, feeling each note with a kind of respect that only people who have earned money with their bodies ever quite manage. She looked at Kola. She looked at the money. She looked at Arais, and something in her shifted, not because of the amount, but because of the way it was given, without superiority, without the performance of generosity, like a woman settling a debt she genuinely felt the weight of. "Leave she said. Don settle." The crowd thinned, the way all crowds thin, when the spectacle they came for is no longer being served. People found reasons to be elsewhere. The jerry can went down. The young man who had carried the tire set it on the ground carefully, and walked away without meeting anyone's eyes, as though distance from the object was the same as distance from the intention. The mob leader tried once more. He spoke about examples, about what happens to communities when people like Kola are allowed to walk away. He was not entirely wrong. He was also not entirely right. And Adaze let him finish before she said the one word that emptied that corner of the market faster than anything else could have. Police. And just like that, the last of them were gone. Adaze turned back to Kola. She crouched down and lifted the tire from his shoulders herself. She had not expected it to be so heavy. She struggled with it slightly, but she did not ask for help. She lifted it and set it on the ground and looked at the man who was still on his knees in front of her. He was shaking, not the dramatic shaking of someone performing their fear, the deep, quiet, involuntary tremor of a body that has held too much for too long and has finally been told that the immediate danger has passed and doesn't quite know yet how to let go of the readiness it built to survive it. He looked up at her, and it hit him, slowly at first, the way recognition always comes. When you see someone in a place they have no reason to be, your brain runs through alternatives, coincidence, resemblance, your own exhausted mind playing games. And then, all at once, it was her. The woman from aisle 7. The woman whose bag had held a serum worth 47,000 naira. The woman whose name Fashola had spoken, like a shield against consequence. The woman who had stood in that parking lot and watched him walk away with nothing, and said nothing. Standing in front of him now, in a market in the dust of the afternoon, with her silk blouse gathering the city's air, and her heels on uneven ground, and her hand extended toward him, like all of it had happened, and none of it could be taken back. And she knew both of those things better than anyone. He didn't take her hand immediately. He wasn't ready. He asked her why she was there. He asked how she knew his name. He told her he didn't want her car. He told her he would walk. She waited. She let him say all of it. She did not defend herself. She did not explain. She did not use the 10,000 naira she had just spent as evidence of anything. She just waited, because some things cannot be rushed, and she had spent enough of her life rushing past the things that actually mattered. Get in the car, Kola. He looked at the tire on the ground beside him. He looked at the jerry can someone had abandoned at the edge of the crowd. He looked at his own hands, still trembling, still his, hands that had folded a prescription carefully that morning, hands that had made tea with too much sugar at 6:30, hands that had done one wrong thing today. After a lifetime of right ones, he looked at her, at the woman who had no obligation to be here, who had every resource in the world to have handled this from a comfortable distance, who had come anyway to this market, on this ground, in those shoes. He got in the car. The SUV moved away from the market slowly, the street closing behind them, the way streets do, filling back in with the ordinary sounds of living as though nothing had just happened there. Inside the car, it was cool and quiet, the kind of quiet that has texture, that you can feel against your skin. Adaez drove with both hands on the wheel. Kola sat with his hands flat on his knees. Neither of them spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because everything that needed to be said was too large for the space between them yet, too raw, too loaded with everything that had happened in the 7 days between aisle 7 and this car, and these two people sitting in it together with a silence between them that was equal parts guilt and grief, and something neither of them had a name for yet. He asked her where they were going. She asked him how long his mother had been sick. He went quiet. She kept driving. That was the answer. She told him she had made calls, that a specialist was waiting, that she had arranged everything. She said it quietly, without looking for gratitude, without presenting it like a gift, like someone reporting a fact, like someone who had done the minimum and was not going to pretend. It was more than that. Kola listened. He looked out the window at the city going past, at the streets he had walked all week, carrying the weight of everything and finding no one to set any of it down with. Drive, he said, and she did. 2 people in one car, moving through a city that did not know their names, carrying between them a weight that neither of them had asked for, and neither of them could put down. The hospital was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes. That is nothing. That is a song on the radio. That is a short conversation. That is the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. But 20 minutes is also everything. Depending on what is at the end of it, depending on what is happening. In apartment 4, Block C, Adisa Street, while those 20 minutes pass. And somewhere in that apartment, while the car moved through the evening light, while Kola sat in a seat that cost more than anything he had ever owned, while Adais drove with the quiet focus of a woman trying to outrun something she already suspected she was too late for, Grace Emanuel closed her eyes. She had asked the transport team if her son was coming. They told her yes. He was on his way. She smiled the way mothers smile when they believe something completely. And the believing itself is enough. She closed her eyes. And the car kept moving. And the clock kept moving. And the city kept moving. And none of it waited. There is a specific kind of hope that only exists in motion. The hope that lives in a moving car, in a foot pressing an accelerator, in the belief that if you just get there fast enough, if you just move with enough urgency, if you just refuse to stop, then whatever you are racing toward will still be there when you arrive. Kola had that hope for 20 minutes. It was the only thing in the car that nobody had to pay for. The hospital appeared through the windshield, the way answers sometimes appear. Suddenly, after a long time of not being there, clean white walls, manicured hedges, security at the gate, the kind of building that exists in a different register from everything Kola had spent the last 7 days inside. He had never been to a hospital this well kept, not for himself, not for his mother. The hospitals he knew had peeling paint and plastic chairs worn smooth by years of waiting, and the particular exhausted kindness of staff who were doing too much with too little and had been doing it for so long that the exhaustion had become its own kind of dignity. This was different, and the difference sat strangely on him, the way anything sits strangely when you receive it from the hands of the person who took something from you first. Adais parked. They walked in. The receptionist smiled. Adesa spoke. Arrangements confirmed. Specialist expecting them. Transport dispatched to Adisa Street. Everything handled. Everything already in motion. Before Kola had even asked a single question, he stood slightly behind her in that reception area and watched her navigate this world with the casual fluency of someone for whom doors have always opened outward, not pushing, not forcing, just arriving, and the world rearranging itself accordingly. He had spent 7 days pushing against doors that opened inward. That required everything he had just to move them slightly. That swung shut again the moment he stopped pushing. He sat down in the waiting area. He looked at his hands. He breathed. He told himself that this was not the time to think about any of that. His mother was coming. The doctor was waiting. That was all that mattered right now. That was the only thing. Adais sat on the other side of the waiting room, not beside him, not too far. The careful distance of someone who understands that proximity has to be earned, and she has not earned it yet. The television on the wall played a news channel, with the sound turned down. A ceiling fan turned slowly above them. The air conditioning hummed. Someone in a corridor somewhere was being paged over an intercom. Kola looked at the door across the waiting room. The door the doctor would come through. The door his mother would be brought through. He looked at it the way you look at something. You are trying to will into moving. Come on, he thought. Just get here. Just get here. And everything else we can figure out later. Just get here. Minutes passed. Arais said something quietly about the drive. He responded in single words. She didn't push. He was grateful for that. His capacity for conversation had completely evacuated his body and left him with nothing but the waiting and the door and the hope that was still alive in him by the thinnest possible thread. More minutes, and then the door opened. But it was not the door he had been watching. It was the door behind him, the corridor door, and the person who came through it was not a transport team with his mother in a wheelchair. It was a doctor. He was older, silver at his temples, a white coat over dark trousers, a face that had learned over many years and many rooms and many families how to carry difficult news without dropping it. He looked at Kola with the specific attention of a man who already knows which person in the room he has come to speak to. Kola stood up. The doctor said his name, Mr. Emmanuel, and in the half second between that and whatever came next, Kola's mind did what minds do. In the last moment, before impact, it ran every alternative, every other possibility, every version of the next sentence that was not the one he could already feel coming, the way you feel weather before it arrives. She is resting. She is sleeping. The journey tired her. She is asking for you. She is here and she is fine and she is asking for you. The doctor said, "Can we step outside for a moment?" And Kola understood, not because of what the doctor said, because of what he didn't say, because of the exact amount of gentleness in his voice, because of the way his hands were folded in front of him, instead of holding a clipboard, because of the way he stood, like a man who has already decided that whatever comes next, he is going to be steady through it, for the sake of the person in front of him. You learn to read people when you have no power. When you have spent your life in rooms where other people hold what you need, you become very good at reading faces, at hearing what is underneath words, at knowing before anyone says anything what the air in a room is carrying. The air in that corridor was carrying something Kola already knew and was not ready to know. She was gone. By the time the transport had reached Adisa Street, by the time they had knocked on the door and Mrs. Ibarra had let them in, and they had found Grace Emmanuel lying quietly on the couch that had become her bed, the Ankara blanket pulled up carefully to her chin, the side table beside her, undisturbed, the 6:30 teacup still waiting to be washed. She was already gone. The doctor said the infection had progressed further than anyone could have known without examination. He said her heart had been under more strain than the medication had been managing. He said it was peaceful. He said she was not in pain. He said these things carefully, the way doctors say them, when they have learned that the details sometimes matter very much to the people left behind. Kola heard all of it. He heard every word. He processed none of it. He walked past the doctor, down the corridor, to room 7, the door slightly open, the room arranged in that specific way. He pushed the door open slowly. She was in the bed, and she was so still. Not the stillness of sleep, not the stillness of rest. The other kind. The kind that is absolute. The kind that has a temperature. The kind that you know the moment you enter the room, even before you cross to the bed, even before you reach out your hand, even before you understand it, in the part of your mind that uses words. He crossed to the bed. He stood over her. She looked smaller than she ever had when she was alive. That is the thing nobody warned you about. How a person can fill every room they enter with their presence alone. How a voice, a laugh, a particular way of folding things can take up more space than a body ever physically could. And how, when that presence leaves, the body, left behind, seems too small to have ever contained it. He reached out, touched her hand. It was cool. He sat down, pulled the chair close the way he had pulled it close every night that week, took her hand in both of his, bowed his head. He stayed like that for a long time. He did not fall apart loudly. Kola did not do things loudly. He had spent his whole life managing large things quietly. He had learned from a woman who had raised him alone and worked double the hours and carried double the weight and smiled through most of it because that was what the situation required. He had learned from her that dignity is not the absence of pain. It is what you do with it. So he sat in that chair and he held her hand and he let the grief move through him. The way deep water moves, not crashing, not performing, just moving, filling every space inside him that she had ever occupied, and finding, with a thoroughness that he was not prepared for, how many spaces those were. He talked to her, not aloud. Inside, the way you talk to people, when the conversation has moved somewhere, that sound can no longer reach. He told her he was sorry he was late. He told her he was coming. He told her he had tried. He told her about the tire in the market, and the woman in the SUV, and the 20 minutes that had been everything. He told her all of it, the way he always told her everything, because she was the only person he had ever been completely honest with, and he was not going to stop now. Just because she was no longer here to answer, he told her about the prescription in his pocket, still folded, still carrying her name at the top. Grace Emmanuel, female, 64 years old. He told her he had been trying. He told her the whole week had been nothing but trying. And then he said the thing that had been sitting in his throat since the moment the doctor had looked at him in that corridor. I would have made it, Mama. Another 10 minutes. Maybe 15. I would have made it. He sat with that. For a long time, he sat with the particular cruelty of being almost, not absent, not indifferent, not somewhere else entirely, almost. 10 minutes from almost the hardest distance in the world. Eventually, he stood. He smoothed the blanket around her, the way she had smoothed blankets around him when he was small and sick and afraid. He folded her hands the way she folded things, carefully, like it mattered, because it did, because she had always mattered, and she was going to go on mattering for every day he had left, whether she was here to see it or not. He turned, he walked out. The corridor received him with the same indifferent efficiency it offered everyone. Fluorescent lights, the distant sound of a machine, a nurse walking past with a clipboard who glanced at his face and looked away with the practiced tact of someone who has learned when not to make eye contact. The doctor was waiting. He said the things doctors say about arrangements and timing and not being alone tonight and there being no rush. He said them all gently. He was a kind man doing a hard job, and Kola heard none of it. He asked the doctor one question. Did she say anything? When the transport arrived, did she say anything? The doctor said she had been lucid when they found her, that she had asked if her son was coming, that they had told her yes, that she had smiled, that she had closed her eyes. Kola nodded. Once. He breathed through his nose, long and slow. He thanked the doctor. He walked down the corridor, back toward the waiting room. Each step measured, each step deliberate. The walk of a man using forward motion as the last available scaffolding, holding everything else in place. He pushed open the waiting room door. Arais was standing at the window, her back to the room, looking down at the car park below, where the evening light was going long and orange. Across the tarmac, she heard him come in. She turned. She saw his face, and she knew. The way people know things, before the words arrive, the way the body receives news, that the mind is still trying to refuse. She took a small, involuntary step toward him. "She's gone," he said. The words came out flat, not because he was trying to be flat, but because flatness was all he had. Everything else had been used up. In that room, in that chair, in those 10 minutes, that were 10 minutes too many. Adie's hand went to her mouth. She was gone before the transport got there. He said it again, not because he had forgotten he said it, but because saying it once was not enough to make it real, because the brain sometimes needs to hear something more than once before it stops searching for the error. Adaize was crying. She had started crying the moment she read his face, and she had not stopped. She crossed toward him. He stepped back, not aggressively, not with anger, just back, just the single step of a man who needs a border between himself and the one person in the room whose presence was making the grief and the anger and the question he had been carrying for 7 days all move toward the surface at once. She stopped. She understood. She stood where she was and let him have the distance. He turned to the wall, both hands flat against it, head down, breathing. The room waited. 30 seconds. A minute. The particular silence of a space that is holding something too large for it. When he turned back around, his face had changed. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But something had moved in front of it. Something that had been building. Since aisle 7, since the biscuit tin, since the pharmacy counter, since the tire, since every moment of that 7-day week that had led from one woman's carelessness to this room. He looked at Adaize, and he started talking, not shouting, not performing, just talking, the way a man talks when he has been holding something for so long that the holding itself has become the wound. He talked about aisle 7, about the serum in her bag, about the moment he had seen it happen and made the decision to do his job, the way his mother had raised him, to do everything with his whole self, without looking for the comfortable exit. He talked about Fashola, about 3 years, about a perfect record, about the moment policy became convenience, the second it was directed at someone powerful, instead of someone like him. He talked about the week, about the phone calls, about the biscuit tin, about the math that never worked, about the tablets cut in half, about the fever that had all the time in the world because the medicine fighting it had been given half the strength it needed. He talked about the bread, about standing at that stall, about the distance between who he was and what he did, about how it felt to cross that line, about how it felt to know that the man who had lost everything for stopping a thief had become one. And then he said the thing that had been true from the moment the doctor looked at him in that corridor. "You didn't just steal from that supermarket." He said it quietly, which made it louder than shouting would have. "You stole my future. You stole the mornings I would have had. The tea at 6:30, the too much sugar, the arguments about medication she never listened to, the way she called me her stubborn son, like it was the best thing a person could be. You stole the ending I was supposed to get, the one where I got the medication, the one where I walked through that hospital door 10 minutes earlier, and she was still there, and she knew I had come." He stopped. His voice had been doing something extraordinary through all of it, staying level, staying controlled, the voice of a man who was spending the very last of something and knows it, and then it broke, just once, just for one word. Not the sickness. The sickness was already there, but you handed it the weapon. You gave it the time it needed. You took the job that was the only thing standing between her and everything that followed. And I need you to understand that. Not so you can fix it. You cannot fix it. There is no version of what you can do that brings her back or gives me those 10 minutes. I need you to understand it because she deserves to be understood. because what happened to her deserves to be named correctly. Because she spent 64 years building a life with her own hands. And she deserved better than this. She deserved better than both of us. Silence. Complete and total silence. Adaïs stood in front of all of it and did not move, did not deflect, did not reach for her composure, or her father's name, or the 10,000 naira, or the specialist, or any of the things that had always been available to her. When the world became uncomfortable, she took every word, and then she broke, not quietly, not with any of the elegance. She had maintained through everything the way real grief breaks, the way real guilt breaks, ugly and total and without any concern for how it looks, or who is watching, or what it costs. You're right, she said, and there was nothing else, because there was nothing else, because he was right, and she had known he was right since the moment she walked out of Grand Mart into that parking lot and watched him walk away with nothing and everything and said nothing. She slid down the wall behind her until she was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up, crying in a way she had probably not cried since she was small enough that the world had not yet taught her to be composed about it. And Kola sat down in a chair across the room, put his face in his hands. 2 people, 1 room, both destroyed for entirely different reasons, and the exact same one. A nurse walked past the open door, glanced in, kept walking, because some rooms you understand immediately, some rooms you leave alone. Time passed. The orange light outside the window turned to purple, turned to dark. The waiting room emptied of other people. The hospital settled into its night version of itself. Quieter, more still. The particular intimacy of a building that is still working, while the rest of the world sleeps. Kola sat up eventually, wiped his face, looked at nothing for a while, then looked at Adaïs. She had moved from the floor to a chair. She had fixed her face the way women learn to fix their faces, except her eyes. The eyes were not fixable tonight. Nothing was going to fix the eyes tonight. He said her name. She looked at him. He told her about the tea, the 6:30 tea, the too much sugar, the argument he had every morning about what the doctor had said, and the argument she ignored every morning because some things are more important than good advice. And one of them is a cup of tea that tastes exactly the way you like it. First thing in the morning, he told her about the neighbors, how his mother knew every name, every child, every problem, how she gave advice nobody had asked for, and how it was always right, and how people kept coming back for more, even while pretending they weren't. He told her about the saying, the one his mother pulled out, every time something went wrong, every time the money ran short, or the job fell through, or the world demonstrated its remarkable capacity for being unkind to people who deserved better. God is not sleeping, my son. He is just taking his time. He said it the way she used to say it, with the particular weight of someone who believes a thing so completely that the saying of it changes the air in the room. Adaïs listened to all of it. She didn't speak. She didn't fill the spaces. She just listened with the whole of herself, the way people listen when they understand that the only useful thing they can offer is to receive what is being given. When he stopped talking, the silence was different from before. Not the silence of 2 people who cannot speak. The silence of 2 people who have said the hardest things and are now simply existing. In the aftermath of them, he told her he needed her to leave. She said okay. He told her he couldn't grieve his mother properly with her in the room, that he understood what she had tried to do today, that he was not calling it nothing, but that nothing she had done and nothing she could do brought his mother back. There is a particular kind of mourning that comes after the worst night of your life. It does not announce itself differently. It does not arrive with any special consideration. for what you have just been through. The light comes the same way it always comes. The street wakes up the same way it always wakes up. The neighbor's generator starts. The woman down the road begins selling tomatoes. Children leave for school in their uniforms. The world does not pause. It never does. And somehow that is both the cruelest thing about grief and the most merciful. Kola woke up on the second morning and made tea. 6:30. Force of habit. The kettle was already on before his mind caught up with his hands and reminded him that there was nobody to bring it to. He stood in the kitchen with 2 cups on the counter and the kettle boiling and the understanding settling over him like weather. He put 1 cup away. He drank his own standing at the window, looking at the street, watching the day begin without him. He did not cry that morning. He had cried in the hospital. He had cried on the walk home. He had sat in his mother's chair and held her blanket and cried the way you cry when the person you are crying for was the same person who always held you when you needed to cry, and the absence and the grief are exactly the same shape. That morning he was empty in the way that comes after, not peaceful, not healed, just emptied, like a house after a storm that is still standing, but has nothing left inside it that isn't broken. He washed the cup. He sat at the table. He looked at the biscuit tin. He did not open it. 3 days passed like that, quiet, deliberate. Each day a series of small actions, performed without any particular faith that they were leading anywhere. Wake up, boil water, eat something small, sit with her blanket, look at the plant on the window step, watch the street, go to sleep, begin again. On the morning of the 3rd day, he heard a car. He knew the sound of it, the particular weight of a well-made engine, idling on a street that was not used to that kind of car. He knew without looking. He sat at the table and waited to see what he would feel. The knock came, not loud, not the knock of someone demanding entry, the knock of someone who was not sure they had the right to be at this door, but had come anyway. He opened it. Ade stood on the step. She was dressed simply, more simply than he had ever seen her. Flat shoes, plain clothes, no jewelry except the small gold studs she always wore, like she had made a deliberate decision about how to show up today, like she understood that this door was not a place for the version of herself that the world usually saw. She was holding a covered tray of food in one hand, a small envelope in the other. They looked at each other. He said nothing. She said she had brought food. She said she was not asking to come in. She said she would leave it at the door if he wanted. She said she would go. He looked at the tray. He looked at the envelope. He looked at her face. He told her he did not want it. She nodded, like she had expected that, like she had come prepared for that. He told her he would rather starve than live on stolen mercy. That phrase landed the way he intended it to, like something precise, like a key finding its exact lock. Stolen mercy, 2 words that contained everything between them: the serum in the bag, the fired security guard, the biscuit tin, the tire, the 20 minutes, the prescription still folded in his pocket. Araiz did not defend herself against it. She did not explain. She did not offer a version of events that made her look better. She set the tray carefully on the step. She said it was there if he changed his mind. She turned and walked back to her car. He watched her go. He looked at the tray. He looked away. He went back inside. He closed the door. He sat at the table. He stared at nothing. Outside, her car stayed on the street for another few minutes. He could hear it, just sitting there. Engine off, like someone sitting inside a decision. Then it started. Then it left. He looked at the door for a long time. Then he got up, opened the door, picked up the tray, brought it inside. He was not ready to call it anything. He was not ready to name what taking the tray meant. He was not ready to attach a feeling to it or allow it to mean something larger. than a man who had not eaten properly in 3 days. Sitting down to a meal. That was all it was. That was enough for today. She came back the next morning. No food this time. No envelope. Just herself. Standing at the door again. In the same flat shoes. With the same deliberate simplicity. She said she wanted to tell him something. About Mr. Fashola. That name. In the quiet of his apartment, in the middle of everything else he was carrying, that name landed like a stone, dropped into still water. He stepped back from the door. "Come in," he said. She came in. She sat in the plastic chair, the one he used to pull to his mother's side. She looked at the chair for a moment, before she sat in it, like she understood what chair it was. He sat on the edge of the couch, his mother's blanket folded beside him. She told him what had happened. She had gone to Grand Mart 2 days after the hospital. She had walked past Fashola's assistant. She had sat down across from him, without being invited, and she had told him everything. Not a version of everything. Not the comfortable version. Not the version that protected her. Everything. That she had stolen from his store deliberately. That Kola had been completely correct. That what Fashola had done in firing him was not a business decision. It was cowardice dressed up as management, and that she had enabled it by standing in that parking lot and saying nothing. She told him about the week that followed, about the medication, about the split tablets, about the tire, about the 20 minutes, about Grace Emmanuel. She put all of it on Fashola's desk, the way Kola had put all of it, on the ground in front of the mob, not as performance, not as strategy, as truth, because truth was the only currency she had left that was actually worth anything. Fashola had sat behind his desk and gotten smaller with every sentence. The man who had told Kola that good men who don't know their place don't last sat very still and received the full accounting of what his cowardice had cost. He said he hadn't known about the mother. She said of course he hadn't known. He hadn't asked. He hadn't thought about what came after, because the moment Kola was gone, the problem was solved. And solved problems don't require further consideration. When you are the kind of man who measures consequences only by what they cost you personally. He asked what she wanted him to do. She told him to say it out loud, that Kola was right, that he was wrong, and then to offer the job back, full back pay, every day since the firing, not as charity, as what was owed. He had picked up the phone that same evening. Kola listened to all of it without moving. "Yes," he said. Fashola called. She asked what he said. He told her Fashola had said everything she described. The admission, the apology, the offer, back pay, same position, starting immediately. She asked what Kola had said. He looked at the window, at the morning light coming through it, at the plant on the sill that he had brought inside, because somebody still had to keep it alive. He said no. She nodded slowly, like she understood, like she had perhaps expected this too. He told her why. He told her that going back to that store meant walking past aisle 7 every single day, meant standing at an entrance that would always remind him of what it felt like to do everything right and lose everything anyway, meant spending 8 hours a day inside the building that was the beginning of everything that followed. Some doors you walk through once, and then you close them forever, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but because walking back through them would cost you something you have already paid too much to preserve. Adai said she understood. She said she thought it was the right decision. He looked at her. She said he had always been too good for that store, that Fashola had known it, that the people who are most committed to doing things with integrity make everyone around them who isn't deeply uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people find reasons to remove the source. He sat with that. Then he asked her what she wanted. Not sharply, Not with suspicion, but with the genuine curiosity of a man who is trying to understand what this is now, what she is now, what these mornings at his door, and this chair, and this conversation amount to. She thought about the question for a real moment, not a polite pause, an actual moment of consideration. She said she wanted to find a way to be useful to him that had nothing to do with guilt, that she didn't know what that looked like yet, that she was not going to pretend she had a plan, but that she was going to keep coming back until she figured it out, or until he told her definitively to stop. He looked at her. He thought about his mother, about what she would have said. If she had been sitting in this room right now, if she had been watching this conversation from the couch with her blanket and her tea, she would have looked at Adai's with those eyes that read people like books they had written themselves. She would have been quiet for a moment, and then she would have said that one has more good in her than she knows what to do with, but she needs to sit down and get humble before God teaches her how. Kola almost smiled. He told Adai's what his mother would have said. Adai's laughed, sudden and unexpected, a little wet around the edges, the laugh of someone who has been holding tension for long enough, that when it releases, it comes out slightly larger than expected. She said his mother would have been right. He said she usually was. The apartment was quiet for a while, a comfortable quiet, the first one they had ever managed together. He told her that he didn't hate her. She said he should. He said maybe, but that hate would reshape him. And his mother had spent 64 years making sure he had a shape worth keeping. He was not going to let one person's carelessness undo 64 years of his mother's work. He was not going to give it that much. She asked what he felt then, toward her. If not hate, he took a long time with the answer. He said he felt like she was a person who had done a terrible thing for a small reason. He said he felt like she was someone who had spent her whole life in rooms where consequences applied to other people, and that she had walked out of Grandmart that day and into a world that was trying to show her what consequences actually looked like. He said he felt like she was not done yet, like whatever this was, these mornings at his door, this chair, this conversation, was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something she owed to herself, more than she owed it to him. He told her not to do this for him. She asked who then. He said, do it for the next person, the one she could hurt without meaning to, the one in some aisle somewhere, living a life that could be wrecked by one careless moment from someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them. Do it for them. He paused. Do it for Grace. Her face did something she could not control. Something moved across it, the way weather moves. Quick and total, and leaving the landscape changed. She nodded. She stood. She picked up her bag. At the door, she stopped. She said she was sorry. Not the sorry of someone looking for absolution. The sorry of someone who has finally understood that some apologies are not requests. They are just the truth of what you carry and the acknowledgement that you will carry it for a very long time. He said he knew. She left. He stood in the doorway and watched the SUV drive away. He watched it until it turned the corner, and the sound of it faded into the ordinary noise of the street. He looked at the street, the children, the woman with the tomatoes, Mrs. Ibarra's green door, the familiar geography of a life that was going to have to be rebuilt now, from the inside out. He looked at the potted plant, on the windowsill where he had moved it, the morning light falling across it, the way it always had, when his mother used to sit nearby. He went back inside, sat at the table, opened the notebook, the one full of numbers that never added up. He turned past all of them, past the pharmacy receipts written out in his own hand, past the columns of income and expense that had never balanced, past the evidence of everything he had tried and everything that hadn't worked. He turned to a clean page. He picked up the pen. He sat with it for a moment, and then he wrote one line in the center of the page, in the careful, deliberate handwriting of a man who takes even small things seriously. Figure it out. You always do. His mother's words. In his hand, on a clean page, in an apartment that was going to take a long time, to stop feeling like it was waiting for her to come back. He looked at the line. He looked at the light coming through the window. He breathed. And then, slowly, without drama, without a plan fully formed, without any certainty about what came next, or how long it would take, or what it would cost, Kola Emanuel turned to the next clean page and began. Morals of the story. Integrity is not what you do. When the world is watching and applauding, it is what you do. When doing the right thing costs you something real. When doing the right thing means standing alone. When doing the right thing means walking out of a building with nothing in your hands but your conscience. Kola knew this. He lived it. And it cost him more than anyone should ever have to pay for simply being honest. But the world has a way of making people pay for virtue. That has always been true and has never been fair. The question is never whether the cost is fair. The question is whether you pay it and remain yourself, or whether you find a way around it and lose something you cannot get back. Adéis had everything, and she took more anyway. Not from need, from habit, from the deep unexamined belief that she existed in a world where her choices had no weight on anyone else's life. That is the lie that privilege tells itself, that it floats above consequence, that the ripples it creates never reach anyone who matters, that the rules are guidelines for people in different circumstances. One moment, one item, one careless decision in a well-lit aisle on an ordinary morning, and a man lost his job, and a mother lost her medication, and a son lost everything. We do not always see the connections between what we take and what someone else loses. But the connections are there. They are always there, running underneath the surface of things, like water under dry ground. Guilt is not the same as growth. Remorse is not the same as change. Showing up is not the same as making it right. But guilt is the door. Remorse is the key. And showing up again and again, imperfectly and without guarantee, is how you learn to walk through it. Adéis had finally stopped walking past that door, and Kola, who had every reason to lock it permanently, had not quite done so. Not because what she did was forgivable yet, not because the grief was small enough to step over, but because his mother had raised him to understand something that takes most people a lifetime to learn. Holding on to what broke you gives it a second chance to break you. Letting go is not forgetting. Letting go is not excusing. Letting go is deciding that what happened to you does not get to be the last word about who you are. Kola had been to the edge of himself that week. He had looked across at someone he didn't recognize. He had done one wrong thing after a lifetime of right ones, and the world had tried to burn him for it. And a woman who had started the whole chain had come back, not with enough, because enough was not possible, but with something. And he had turned to a clean page. That is not a small thing. That is not a simple thing. In the middle of grief and hunger and loss and injustice, turning to a clean page is one of the most difficult and most human things a person can do. God is not sleeping. He is just taking his time, and so was Kola. That is the end of Kola and Adéis' story. Or maybe it is the beginning of who they each become next. Because stories like this one do not end in the last chapter. They end in the choices that follow, in the clean pages, in the mornings after, in the person you decide to be when the worst has already happened. And the question is simply what you do now. Before you go, I need one thing from you. Drop a comment and tell me which moment in this story stayed with you Was it Kola folding that prescription the way his mother folded things? Was it Grace smiling because someone told her her son was coming? Was it Araiz lifting that tire off a man she had wronged? Was it the clean page? Tell me. I want to know. I read every single comment. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please share it with one person today, not for the numbers, because someone in your life needs to hear this story right now. You already know who. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, because the next story is already coming. And if this one stayed with you, that one will not let you go. Drop your city in the comments, your country, your continent, wherever you are in the world right now. This story started on one street. Let us see together how far it traveled. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for giving this story the audience it deserved. Until next time, stand for something, even when it costs you, especially then.